How's it guys? My name is Mitch and I'm an alcoholic. To start off, I'm very, very nervous. So just bear with me if things get a little bit all over the place. Okay, so I guess I'm going to start at the beginning. I was born in Johannesburg to a very loving family. Born in the East Rand, Edenvale. And my parents got divorced very early on, but that didn't really have an effect on me because I grew up knowing my stepfather and my dad's wife, and for me it was normal because my stepfather never treated me any differently or like I wasn't his, if I can say that. So I always grew up with my mom and living with my pops in a very loving home and seeing my dad every second weekend or so, and that was just, it was normal. And I, from what I can remember, growing up, I was fairly confident. I loved making friends, and that was all fairly easy for me. I quite enjoyed being around people. And then, as I got older, to about the age of about 5 or 6, I can remember I had my lunchbox at school, and I didn't eat my lunch, and for some reason, I was terrified of what was going to happen if I went home and told my parents I didn't eat my lunch. And I threw my lunch away. Or actually, I hid it behind my cupboard, and I did that for quite some time until eventually our domestic brought all these moldy sandwiches forward to my mom, and she just sat me down and asked me why didn't I just come forward and say I didn't eat my lunch. And I can't remember what I said, but I remember I lied. And that was the first time I can remember just being extremely fearful, and thinking that the whole world was going to end, but it was just illogical. And that sparked off a pattern that would then continue and get worse and worse. So I went to 2 different government schools for primary school. And in my second government school, I made I was best friends with a guy who actually lived next door to us. We used to ride our bicycles to school together, and the one day him and I were leaving school, and we were going down quite a big hill, and I grabbed my brakes and there were no brakes, and I managed to stop, but I'd seen that my brakes were disconnected, and my friend at the time, him and I went and told my parents. We then went to the school about it, and it was a whole big issue. And a couple of weeks later, my friend's parents actually brought him to our house and said he was the one that actually did it. And I can remember feeling very angry, very confused, let down, disappointed as to why someone who I thought was my friend would do this to me. And I think that's also where I started becoming very suspicious and distrustful of people, and that was the first real time I was angry at someone, and I held on to that for a very long time. Shortly after that, I left school and I went to a private school, co-ed private school. But in the interim, I'd started dancing. From the age of 7, I started dancing. My mom would come home and she'd seen me, I think, flailing myself around the lounge listening to music, and she suggested, why don't I try out dancing lessons? So I started with tap dancing and all that sort of stuff, and for me it was normal. I was doing something I wanted to do. I was always very good at sports at school, or anything sport-wise that I wanted to get involved in. I was generally quite good. And then around about grade 6, so about age 12, I started getting bullied quite a bit for my dancing, called names, all that sort of stuff. But it didn't really affect me too much. And then I started high school in the same school, same group of people, and that's when I think things started to change for me. I started worrying about what people thought I looked like, what people thought of me. The bullying got a bit worse, especially with the older boys and stuff. They used to pick on me quite a bit. But when I would spend time with my dad, on the weekends we used to go to Hartbeespoort Dam, and I'd met a group of guys there who were all about 2 to 3 years older than me, and they were already, smoking cigarettes, drinking. Some of them were experimenting with drugs and things like that, and I kind of wanted to be part of them. And also there was really nothing to do at the dam. So I started hanging around with them, started, doing what they were doing, and I just wanted to feel accepted, and that's where I think my first bit of wanting to fit in, that kind of behavior, that kind of chameleon behavior started coming out. But yeah, while I was in early parts of high school, I did my sports. I was very good at my swimming. I played soccer. I did all of those sort of things. My academics were never very good, but that's just because I didn't really care about my academics, to be fair. I was always wanting to be out. I always wanted to be with my friends. I always wanted to be playing a sport or doing something like that. And then in grade 10, so when I was about 15, 16 years old, I met a girl. She was in the same school as me. She was a year younger than me. And her and I got into a relationship. And I made that relationship the be-all and end-all of my happiness. I based a lot of my happiness on that relationship. And we'd been together for about a year or so, and she cheated on me, and then she came and told me. And I obviously was very hurt by this, but I didn't want to break up. I wanted to try and make it work. I thought everyone can make a mistake, so she said it was just a mistake, so let's try and make it work. But what I didn't realize is how my behavior would change. I started becoming very controlling. I was very distrustful, to the point where my school had offered me a fully paid trip to go to Australia and compete with the other Redham houses, and it's basically we get together and all the schools compete in arts and dance and sport and all that sort of stuff, and they were willing to pay for me to go. And I made up every single story I possibly could to not go, because I didn't want to leave her. I wanted to watch her, or I couldn't trust me being away for 2 to 3 weeks and something not happening again. Well, needless to say, that relationship ultimately failed. And I can remember being very angry, very bitter, extremely hurt, and it was something I wasn't even really willing to let go of, I remember feeling that anger and actually feeling quite powerful when I was angry, and I enjoyed that. And so yeah, I continued with school. I think we'd broken up when I was in grade 11, somewhere around there, and my lying behavior just continued especially with my parents. I'd always make up stories as to why my grades were low. I tried to pull the card of I'm stupid, and I tried to honestly believe that I was stupid, and that's why I wasn't achieving at school. And also just the things that I was getting up to outside of school, especially when I was on my weekends away with my dad, I would be very dishonest. My dad would say, "What are you guys going to do if you sleep out?" I would say, "No, we're going to play Xbox and do nothing." Meanwhile, our plan was to go and get alcohol and to drink and to kind of party and do whatever we wanted, and just create general havoc. And I can remember when I was drinking, all my social anxiety, all my worries about what people thought, all of those sort of things just disappeared, and I would get to a place where I just didn't care. And that's what I loved. I loved not caring. I didn't want to care for other people. I didn't want to care what they thought. I just didn't want to care. And alcohol gave me that ability, So yeah, as time went on, I would always drink excessively. I could never go out with a group of friends and have 1 or 2 drinks and go home. I was always that type to go out and just, when everyone else wanted to go home, I wanted to stay, and I wanted to carry on and carry on and carry on. And for me, I've never understood the point of having a glass of wine with a meal, or just having 1 or 2 beers. And I've never understood someone that could have half a beer and let it go warm and then just throw it away. it would blow my mind. You know, for me, if you were going to drink, you would drink to get on, and that was it. Otherwise, don't waste your time. That was pretty much my way of thinking. Sorry, just to jump back. During all of this, before I was about 17, my dad and I had a bit of a rocky relationship, my biological father that is, because he never supported my dancing. It was not a subject we spoke about. He wouldn't let me speak about it in front of his friends. And then when I was about 15, 16, he would start calling me names. He started calling me fag, he started calling me gay and all those sort of things. And I don't have a problem with, you know, gay people or whatever, but I hate being called what I'm not. And I think I was about 17, maybe 18. He was walking behind me and he was chirping this in my ear, and I picked him up and I threw him over the couch and into the table. And him and I both just left the house and came back about an hour or so later, and it was like it never happened. We both just didn't speak about it, we both didn't confront it, and we just kind of left it at that. But my dad knew how to press my buttons, and he would always try and rile me up. And he used to be very negative about my mom and my stepfather all the time, and try running down and try to tell me that, you know, my mom's trying to get money out of him and all this sort of stuff. And he just used to make me very angry, to the point where I would try and put in a boundary with him, and he would then flat out ignore me. You know, I would be in the house with him and I'd try to talk to him, and he would pretend that I'm literally not there. So I eventually just stopped fighting with him. I gave up with him, because it was me coming home and telling my mom, and then what was going on was hurting my mom, because I think she could see how angry I was getting about it. And she kept saying to me, just leave it, he's never going to change. And I wanted him to change. You know, I wanted him to kind of be the dad that I wanted, even though I'd already got my pops, who was more than I could ever ask for. But I never saw that. You know, I always took that for granted. My mom and my pops were always going to be there in my mind. You know, I was always chasing the relationship with him, because he was always putting it off and was always strained. And I never had gratitude for my parents. You know, I always took advantage of them no matter what. And I never had a want for anything either. You know, I was put through private schooling, and I was given the best opportunities that basically money could afford. And it was I always just kind of expected it. You know, it was never a fact of, well, I have to work for that, or I must be grateful. That's what I expect. And it's not how they raised me. I don't know where I got that mentality from, but that's what I thought. Anyway, we get round to matric, and everyone starts getting their cars and talking about what they're going to do, and I had no clue what I was going to do. All I knew is I wanted a nice car. But the conditions were, I must pick my grades up and you'll get a nice car, and if you work hard, and, you know, like normal, if you work hard, you'll get the gifts. And I didn't want that. I was impatient, and my father had a car which I basically managed to manipulate and get my own way, and took my dad's old car and tried to do it up with sound and this and that and whatever. But I remember being a little bit resentful, because all my friends were getting fancy BMs and new Polos, and here I was with this old, you know, VW that didn't really fit in with the cool vibe that I thought. But anyway, moving on from there. So when it came to the end of matric, I managed to somehow get the best report. My final matric results were actually the best results I'd had throughout my entire high school career. And I was allowed I got the opportunity to study BBA. But I decided to pursue teaching, because I was going to go into dancing full time and maybe open my own dance studio, and that was my plan, and teaching was going to be my fallback. So I had managed to organize a job through my biological father to go work at the school that he worked at. He was vice principal there, and I was going to go and intern, and I could move out the house and live in a digs with eight or nine other guys. And so yeah, I did that. in a matric, I remember moving out very early on in January. I moved out, and in this time I'd met another girl, and she stayed on the west end of Joburg, and so every weekend I would make sure that I was going that side to see her. So once I'd left home, I basically hardly made any time for my mom and my pops again. You know, it was all about me, all about the Joel, all about the girlfriend, and all about work. It was never about, you know, making time to see them, making time to actually tell them what was going on in my life, involve them in my life. And what I tend to do in relationships is I will do anything to make the other person happy, and I stop basically caring about what I want, and I stop caring about what my family wants as well. It's all about them and their family. And I started doing that with this relationship as well, to the point where my mom would ask, you know, when are you guys going to come and see us? And it was always excuses. You know, it was always, oh, we've got plans there, or I've got to go and work, and it's too far to go and fetch her and then come back. And it was always just excuses, you know. But anyway, during this time as well, when I'd moved out, I remember my first night alone in that digs, my roommates hadn't moved in yet. I went to the bottle store, I bought myself a bottle of brandy, a 2-liter Coke, and my version of, you know, doing something I wanted as an independent adult now was sitting, playing Xbox, and drinking a whole bottle of brandy. Yeah, by myself, not with anyone else. And I thought that was normal. You know, I thought that was okay, there's no one around to tell me it's wrong, I'm not doing anything, everything's going to be fine. No warning flags went off, so yeah, that's just how I thought. And then, excuse me, on the 14th of February 2013, I had a really bad hijacking. I managed to get away with my car, but that experience changed the way I thought and felt about a lot of things. I became very angry, became very bitter, very hateful. And everything then was definitely poor me. You know, why did this have to happen to me? I'm such a nice guy, why has this happened to me? I don't deserve this. And I can remember just being extremely angry about it. And from that point on, when I used to go out with my friends and stuff like that, if someone chirped me or looked at me funny, I'd want to start getting into a physical altercation, because that is the way I wanted to solve my problems. And because I felt I'd been hurt and screwed by others, by friends and by girlfriends and by everyone else in my head around me, I was now going to take it out on other people. And I believed that I was right, you know. If you swore at me or you chirped me, I was going to hit you, because that was my way of dealing with things. And I enjoyed the affirmation I would get from it. You know, I enjoyed people then saying, you know, oh, don't go near him, you know, he's aggressive or whatever. I like the fact that people then didn't really want to be around me, you know. They weren't going to take advantage of me. They weren't going to try and chance things with me. But then this brought a whole different group of friends into my life. We all kind of did the same thing. We'd all go out, we'd all cause cuck, and we'd all drink excessively, and that's just how it was. And then at the end of 2014, end of 2013, halfway through, 2014, this relationship with this girl had got very toxic. Her parents were also raging alcoholics, and for that year and a half that her and I were together, it suited me fine, because it meant whenever I was there, drinking was not a problem, and I could drink as much as I liked, and it was normal. Because when I was around my parents, you know, drinking out of hand was never really something that was done. You know, it wasn't something that was condoned. It wasn't really something that you do. You know, you have a glass of wine or two with your meal, you enjoy it, and you then go to bed or whatever. It was never to overconsume. But for me, I always wanted to just overconsume. That was the point. That was the reason I drank, was to drink as much as humanly possible. So yeah, her and I, eventually the relationship ended, and it ended quite badly. But yeah, I won't really get into that. It's not really important. And then yeah, in 2015, I had to move back home. So now I'd come from an independent environment, and I was going to move back home to now where there were rules, and I was starting a new degree, because now teaching, I decided, wasn't for me. I didn't like it in the classroom. So I was moving back home. So I moved back home, and now obviously there were rules. During the week, you don't really go out. You don't go out in the club and come home at 1:30 in the morning. My parents go to work and those sort of things. And I can remember being quite acid about that, because all my friends were able to go out whenever they wanted, do whatever they wanted, come home whenever they wanted, and that was all fine. And I felt like I was being, restricted. So I would just then get extremely sneaky, manipulative. I was very dishonest. I would say to my parents, I'm going here for a bra. Meanwhile, I'd be going out to a club or a bar, and I would go out there. So I was never really where I said I was going to be. And the bad behavior just kind of continued. And yeah, consequences started coming my way. I had been arrested for drinking and driving, or driving under the influence. And to be honest, I don't even remember leaving the bar. I don't actually remember getting to the bar, because by this stage my drinking had taken off to the point where I think I was drinking just about every day. I was drinking just about every single day, and I was drinking excessively all the time. And the reason for that was, in my mind, was because when I'd wake up, I'd have such a bad hangover that I would need to drink to just feel okay again and function. So I wouldn't be feeling like I'm going to be sick all the time. But actually it was also because I couldn't function without having a drink anymore. I couldn't face people anymore without having a drink, because I would have this committee of voices in my head always going as to, who have you told what this dishonesty to, who have you told this to, when are you going to get the next bottle, when is the next jaw, what are you going to do about your studying, your marks are useless, all these sort of things. I'd always have these thoughts, and I just wanted it to just be quiet. I just wanted to not be there anymore. And this overwhelming sense that I was doing something wrong all the time was always sitting. I can remember feeling it like in my chest, that I was doing something wrong. But I had no idea how to do it any different. And I was extremely arrogant, where I didn't ever ask for help. My parents would always offer advice and, say, try do things this way or do it that way. And I would always basically just give them the finger and say, I'm going to do it my way, because that's how I want to do it. Not because of any logical reason, but purely because that's how I want to do it. And I'm going to show all of you that I can do it. Well, I proved to everyone I can't. I proved to everyone, and all that I did was just cock everything up royally. When I was about 23 years old, so what's that, 2 years ago now, I'd met another girl, but this girl was completely out of any sort of normal type of girl that I would go for, and her and I basically jumped into this relationship very, very quickly. And again, I made it all about her, but because I was drinking so much, I made it a promise to myself that, okay, when I get into a relationship, I'll stop. I will stop drinking when I get into a relationship. And I got into this relationship, and I did stop for a little while. But again, I made it all about her. I would spend all my time with her. I would be there. Every time I wasn't at work, I'd be there, And I was also very obsessed with gym from early on as well, so you'd have to jump back again. because I was skinny when I left school and I hated it. You know, I always saw the affirmation that the bigger guys would get from women and stuff like that, and I wanted to be like that. You know, I wanted to be big. I also wanted to look intimidating. I wanted to basically just get all the affirmation that came along with being a bigger guy. So I'd been gymming quite a bit, and I'd put on, you know, quite a lot of weight and size and stuff like that. And I can remember getting into this relationship, and everything was fine and dandy right in the beginning, but about 2 months in, 2 to 3 months in, I can remember waking up and saying to my girlfriend at the time, I'm going to go to gym. And she said to me, no, you're not. I said to her, why? She said, because I don't like the way other girls look at you. You need to stop going to gym now. And I thought, okay, sure, no problem. So I stopped going to gym. But that just kind of made me angry and resentful towards her. And she'd also basically started manipulating the way I thought, in terms of, she was saying my parents were against me, my parents were trying to split us up, my parents don't want the best for me, my parents only want me to do what they want me to do, I'm not my own person. And I thought, just this chick is sharp, she can see everything that's going on, so I'm going to listen to her, cool. And I never actually had the balls to sit my parents down and have an open and honest conversation. When I would go and kind of speak my mind as to what's going on, I would always have to be rather drunk, and I would be rude, aggressive. I was actually just a horrible person to my parents, and it makes me cringe that that's how I was. Sorry, especially to people that have done so much for me. And anyway, it's something I wish I could take back, but I can't. And I was horrible. I was very rude to them. I can remember Mom just being very angry with me and just basically saying to me, please, can I just stop? Can I just talk to her? Can I tell her what's going on? And I didn't want to. It was, again, I'm going to do this. This is my life. You're not going to tell me how to live it. You're not going to tell me how I'm going to do things. I'm going to do it my way. Anyway, needless to say, actually no, before that, I started having episodes where I would pass out in the house, and I would wake up very aggressive, wanting to fight. My pupils would be in different, like dilated differently and all that sort of stuff. And we didn't know why. I knew why, but I didn't want to admit why. But I went to hospital, and I had this funny little thing put on my head, and I had to spend 24 hours in the hospital. And the next day the doctor came and told me I'm extremely dehydrated. And my mom had said, it's because you're drinking too much. And I thought, no man, I'm fine. Look at me, I look fine, I feel fine, I'm still working, I'm young, this is how it's supposed to be, you know. And I can remember the doctor coming in and saying to me, how much are you drinking? And, you know, I lied to him and I said, no, not that much, you know, the same as an average 23-year-old would drink and whatever. He said, okay, well, I'm just going to give you pieces of, basically what's going to happen. If you don't stop drinking the way you're drinking now, you'll be dead before you're 28. And I can remember my thought was, no, you're an idiot. Look at me, I'm fine. I'm in like the prime of my life. You know, I'm sharp. You're an idiot, you don't know anything. Again, Mitchell knows best. So I left the hospital, and I think my drinking actually got worse. Because again, now I was going to prove a point that I was going to do it my way, and I was going to now drink more because I could. And then my girlfriend at the time had cottoned on to my drinking, and then it had picked up, and her and I were fighting all the time, and eventually that relationship just fizzled out. And when that relationship ended, I kind of went mad, you know. I felt like everything in my life was turning to shit, excuse my French. I wasn't really doing well in my studies. I wasn't where I wanted to be at my age. I wanted to already have, be living on my own, have the nice car, have the nice girl, have the bikes, have everything that I thought I should have by that age, but never really actually doing anything to achieve it, but thinking I was. So I just got into a very downward spiral. A lot of my friends at this point had pulled away from me. I've only really had 2 friends left that would socialize with me, but that soon stopped as well, because one of my friends, I went to his house, and he doesn't really drink, but him and I have been friends since primary school, and I can remember going there, and I was already drunk when I got there, and I started stealing alcohol from him, and he knew. He didn't say anything to me, he knew though, and he sent me a message the following morning, a picture of the bottles, and saying, basically, when he sees me again, he's going to beat the shit out of me. And I didn't care. I didn't really care, But anyway, things slowly started to get worse. I got fired from my job. Where I was working with my dad, I got fired from there for suspected drinking on the job. And my dad and I still didn't have a good relationship. In fact, it was in tatters. But yeah, anyway, I just lost my train of thought. Okay, so then from there I spent a little bit of time at home trying to look for other work, and I found other work working for a gym as a sales consultant. And I now thought, I'm in my dream environment. Because I want to be working in gyms and the fitness industry. This is where I want to be. But I hadn't shaken the fact that I was still drinking every day, and I tried to mask my drinking while I was at work, but I wasn't doing it very well. And I started having a fallout with the boss because our agreement he wasn't sticking to his side of the agreement and whatever. So eventually I just resigned from there. But what I'd done just before that actually is I'd blown the motor on my car, and I'd taken quite a bit of time to fix it. And when I did fix it, I was about to start work for a vacuum cleaner company. And the day we'd fixed it, I remember going straight to the bottle store, buying booze, and I was on my way to an appointment, and the rest of it is quite a blur, but I remember waking up just before I crashed into the guy in front of me, and needless to say, I wrote my car off, and I wasn't hurt, I don't know how, but I was more worried about taking my bottle with me than what I'd actually just done. It was more about how am I going to now bullshit my way out of this situation and try and make it not my fault, try and shift the blame, try and basically just get out of it. And that was all I was concerned about. And my mom and pops were, they were already at their wits' end with me. They didn't know what was going on with me, what to do with me. I was never honest. And my drinking was a real problem. I mean, I couldn't go out and come home without being asked, was I drinking or being breathalyzed. I forced my parents to buy a breathalyzer and breathalyze me every time I got home. But yeah, anyway, after that, and after I'd left the Planet Fitness job, I went and got severely drunk, and in a blackout, I went and bought myself a motorbike with the money I got paid out from the insurance for my car, and a helmet, and ridden from Kyalami to Bedford View, and somewhere in that I'd crashed, and I woke up the next morning in the back seat of my friend's car, who I was staying with for the weekend, because my parents were away and I wasn't allowed to stay at the house by myself. I don't know what had happened. I just woke up, my knee was, I was in pain and whatever, and my friend was so angry with me, he didn't even want to really speak to me. He just said, "This is what you've done." And my initial was, "You're lying. There's no ways I've done that." I thought he was joking. He was like, "I'm dead serious. Your bike's at the police station. I've had to fight with the cops to basically not get you to go to jail. Your parents are coming back from their holiday early because of this." And I can remember the only thing I thought about after that is, I need to drink. I can't deal with this. I can't deal with this. And I don't remember much after that. And then after that, my parents tried to help me by taking me to doctors, because basically we try to think, I thought and they thought that maybe there was something wrong with me mentally. Maybe I had split personality disorder or something. So my parents spent a lot of money on herbal medication, going and seeing a doctor to try and diagnose me with whatever's going on. And basically we thought I had split personality disorder, and for me that fitted exactly what I was doing. I was irrational. I would go between one personality and another, and the only thing that was actually different was one was sober and the one was when I was drunk. Anyway, I knew my problem was drinking, but I didn't want to admit to it, and I wanted to stop more than anything else in the world. But every time I tried to stop, I would get to a couple of hours or a couple of days, and I would have this thought that just popped into my head and would be, "You see, you're fine. You can have one glass, or you can have one little shot. You can handle it. It's fine. It's just one." And as soon as I'd have that one, it was straight back into, "I need to get more. I need to get more." It was the only thing I would think about. It was the only thing that I cared about, was getting that next bottle. To the point where I was stealing alcohol from my parents. I was stealing money from my parents. I was literally do anything to get my fix. But anyway, from there, my parents took me to the house they've got out in the bush and tried to do a dry out there. And everything was going fine. I was okay, other than still trying to steal alcohol here and there and getting caught and still trying to lie. But other than that, I thought I was doing okay. I thought I would be fine. And then came back to Joburg, and my friend who I'd actually screwed over with the whole Planet Fitness thing and the bike thing, he'd given me another chance and he'd organised me a job. And his one request to me was, "Please don't drink on the job. Drink on the weekends or whatever, just don't drink on the job." And for the first week or two, I didn't. I still managed to get my fix and just drink when I was at home, but eventually it started becoming every day again, and during work hours and all that stuff. And I actually met an addict who worked with me, and her and I got along quite well, and it was her, myself, and one of the other younger guys that worked at this gym. We all became quite close, and myself and the other guy actually got her to relapse with us. And anyway, she knows the golden thread, because when my stuff got out of hand again and I got fired from this job, she said to me I must come to meetings with her, and she'd spoken to my parents, and I'd agreed, let's go to meetings, because maybe I do have a problem. Because before this, sorry, I keep jumping around, but before this, my parents had taken me to go see a rehab, and we went and saw it, walked around the place, and I just thought, I'm not like these people, I'm not in my 40s or 50s. I'm too young to be here. I'm not an alcoholic, I'm not. I'm just young, I'm supposed to be drinking, and everyone else is just being too harsh on me. So I didn't go. So I waited another year, basically, I think, somewhere around there to go. But anyway, once I'd been fired from this job, I was starting to go to meetings, and I got myself a sponsor. And I was clean for a small period of time, but again, I'd had that thought, you see you can do it, just have one. And for quite some time already, my parents have been locking the alcohol away, but I, being the way I am, had figured out how to steal wine out of a locked wine cabinet. I'd figured out how I could bend the wood and pull the wine bottles out of a locked cabinet and no one would ever know, and then just hide the bottles everywhere. So I had bottles hidden everywhere in the house. And I can't remember exactly how, but my parents, they caught me as normal. Because, it was just simple. I was the only one that was stealing alcohol. There was no one else there. And I couldn't exactly blame my maid because she doesn't drink. So, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so I'll just quickly end off. Anyway, so this girl I'd met, she spoke to my parents and said, I'm a flat out alcoholic and basically you need to kick him out the house. Which they did. My mom actually took me to my biological father's house, who didn't want anything to do with me, and I ran out the property and I went straight to Linksfield Bridge because I wanted all of this to stop. I didn't know how to stop, but I wanted it to stop. And I remember climbing over the barrier and holding on and counting the cars because I wanted to jump and I wanted to make a good enough job that I didn't survive, because I couldn't carry on like this and I couldn't carry on putting my parents through what I was putting them through, but I couldn't stop. And I can remember the only reason I didn't jump was because there weren't enough cars in my mind, Anyway, I got back. My parents eventually got me back in the house. They phoned my sponsor in the morning, and my sponsor came to the house and gave them a brief explanation of addiction, and then I got given two choices: either get out or go to treatment. So I agreed to go to treatment on the Saturday or the Sunday, and I was there on the Tuesday. And I came in only supposed to be there for 24 days, but after being there for a week or two, I think, something like that, I realized I couldn't change 24 years of bad behavior in 24 days. I had to completely change the way I think and the way I do things in order to not live the life I was living. And I'd seen other people around me in the rooms here end up at treatment happy and free of addiction, and living honestly, which is something I'd never done. And I wanted that more than anything in the world. And I can remember begging my sponsor, begging my parents to stay, because I wanted this life. I wanted a relationship with them. I wanted to be clean and sober, and I just wanted to be better. I didn't want that anymore. So eventually, yes, I managed to stay there 3 months, and then I got the opportunity to go to the halfway house. And I've been down here now for a year, and it's been the most amazing year I've had in my entire life. I've got probably the best relationship I've ever had with my parents. I can speak to them openly and honestly. I can tell them what's going on. I can be honest with everyone around me. When I say I'm somewhere, it means I'm there. People can now depend on me, and I'm not ashamed to ask for help anymore. If I'm struggling, I'll ask for help. And for the newcomers that come in, I always want to try and help them and share my experience, because I understand what it's like to come in fearful, lost, and just wanting it all to stop. But for the people that are here that are new, if you decide to take this program on, it will change your life completely. It has changed my life like you don't understand. I've got friends that I can trust today. I've got my mom, my pops, who I do appreciate now, and who I can be there for. And I'm learning about myself all the time, and And I found out I'm actually, when I'm working a program, I'm not a bad guy. But it's something I'm going to work on for the rest of my life, just for today. And I just want to say thank you to everyone for helping me get to where I am today, because I couldn't have done it without you. Mom, Pops, thank you for everything and never giving up on me. And to my sponsor. And yeah, thanks for letting me share.